Good morning, I'm Walker. Here we are in Vicky 3 Academy, and we're discussing how to use oil. So this, as just a preface, this video may not be useful once 1.1 drops, because it might modify the AI behavior to the point where they are actually, like, getting oil out of the ground. But right now they're not. And so this video is aimed to help you kind of navigate how to develop your own oil economy in a world where you're the only person who cares about oil. First things first, where does oil come from? Oil comes from like two things. It's produced in whaling stations and oil rigs, but these are not the same. Whaling station is 30 levels of oil, or 30 points of oil per level, whereas an oil rig is 100. And of course, the methods of production that you can apply to these things make it so that oil rigs can dramatically outproduce whaling stations very easily. But they come from different things. So whaling stations are going to be on potentials in a couple of areas. Mostly it's going to be, coastal cold areas. That's where whales were historically hunted. And so you'll get tiny amounts of oil from there. But by and large, most of it's going to be coming from stuff from the ground. As just a brief aside on whaling oil, I think part of the problem right now is that whales are not, their oil isn't really useful for anything. There's no way to use oil industrially prior to level 3 technologies, which means that no demand builds up for oil amongst potential methods of production, which means that if you're making whaling stations, you're mostly just like wasting the oil for the first 30 years of the game. And that means that like historical things that occurred, like the United States going to Japan to force them to open the markets so that way they could whale here because they'd already exhausted the whale population in the North Atlantic Ocean by just hunting them to death. That sort of behavior isn't currently happening, and I think if they introduced a way to use oil earlier, it would be helpful. But oil out of the ground. Oil out of the ground is going to be on these discoverable resources tiles. Most of them, actually right now all of them, there is an oil map. I'll post it here, but it's not consistent. I gave everybody who could find oil level 4 technologies, so that way they would have pneumatic tools, pump jacks, dynamite, and nitroglycerin, and just let the game run for 26 years. And you'll see here, like, not all of the oil was actually discovered yet, because it's a mean time to happen thing with percent chances, and some of them are really taking a long time. I can't believe it. They haven't found anything in Texas, nothing in Mexico yet. But that's, that's random chance. But what that means is not only can you only find oil in very specific locations, but once it's been discovered, there isn't currently a whole lot of demand for it in the game, and so the AI isn't really building it, and so you kind of have to build it yourself. And that means that there's just an extremely finite supply of it, and the methods of production and the way that they're coming to you are going to kind of determine how you have to use it. So let's talk about the methods of production and the ways that you can utilize your oil. At the beginning of the game, you're going to get or probably the middle of the game, it's probably an 1850s tech, you're going to pick up pump jacks. That's going to be really helpful because automatic irrigation is an absolute banger. Great technology to pick up even if there's no oil underneath your land, but hopefully there is, because you are going to need it, and this is going to help you start discovering it. Initially, you're not going to have anything to use it on, though. You're just going to be getting it out of the ground for your pops to burn. But fortunately, there's another level 3 production technology available to you that'll let you start using it. Now, does this mean that you're going to stick with vacuum canning throughout the rest of the game? Not necessarily, but that's not why this is good. This is good because it starts to create demand for it, like in the same way that mechanical tools generates demand for steel and therefore supports steel industries. Vacuum canning creates demand for oil in an industrial scale and therefore supports oil rigs if you get an early oil rig. So that's really important to know and really important to utilize. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to keep all of those oil things forever, because you're going to get a lot of them and you're not going to get a lot of oil. Moving on to the level 4 things, I don't think there's anything else in here that we need. Synthetic plants, I think they don't use oil anymore. At one point they had used oil, but that was just like absolutely terrible. Yeah. So in level 4s, we've got plastics. This one I think is just entirely skippable. It uses oil to make glass. You know what else you can use to make glass? Literally anything. Just don't mess around with this. It's not a good use of oil. Vacuum canning's better. On the other hand, combustion engine, this is pretty good. Combustion engine, the most important thing I think is that it is a prerequisite for compression ignition, which is outrageous. But even as an interstitial thing, it's not bad because it gets you a lot more oil. It gets you combustion engine derricks, which doubles the oil production, right? This is plus 100 per level. This is plus another 100 per level. Combustion engine is necessary in order to use large amounts of oil. It also offers you ways to use oil yourself. Like if you want to use it in your logging camps, you can. This doesn't increase productivity, but it shifts the jobs around. And so if you need some automation, chainsaws gets you there. And if you want some more rich trade union pops, this will also get you there, right? Because that's getting you, instead of a bunch of laborers, it's getting you some machinists and some engineers. And keeping in mind that, you know, your methods of production are going to influence your interest groups. This is useful. This is useful information to keep in mind. Always keep that stuff back end. You can use public motor carriages. That's okay too. It gets you another way to generate demand for transportation and therefore reduce subsidies that you have to pay to railways, which is very helpful for you as the government. It also gets you motorized reconnaissance, which is pretty neat. Just popping over here to motorized reconnaissance instead of bicycle messengers. You see we get like plus 10 total stats instead of bicycle messengers, as well as an extra 10% provinces captured. That's pretty neat. It's not as big a deal as aerial reconnaissance, but of course aerial reconnaissance is much later in the game. It's just a question of whether or not it's worth it for you to go into motorized reconnaissance, because motorized is going to require that not only do you have extra oil going to your barracks, but you also have to go into automobile production for motor industries. And right now, automobiles are not being used for a lot. In fact, they're literally only used for barracks and conscription centers and pops. So you need to find a way, if you're gonna utilize it, motorized reconnaissance, you need to find a way to get your pops interested in buying it. If you're lucky, it'll become an obsession. You can try to export motor industries to other countries to like generate demand there, but it's hit and miss. I think that because of the current nature of the economies in the AI and because of the current lack of ways to ensure consumer demand for industry for automobiles, I don't typically like them, but this alone makes this technology amazing and great to go after. In terms of other stuff in level 4, there's not really a lot. There's back over here, we have, yeah, all of these are level 5s. So in level 3 and level 4, you have kind of finite ways to use your oil, and so don't be too worried about whether or not you need to pull back on oil use. I would just go out in search of it at level 3 and level 4 technologies. Like, just conquer it around the map, right? Conquer it, develop it, own it for yourself. You can use it in your economy kind of wherever. The real crux comes in level 5, because at level 5 you're going to start running into the point where you really cannot use diesel pumps in everything. You can't. You will not have enough oil because you'll have so many iron mines and lead mines and coal mines and everything that like you'll literally never have enough oil. And that's why you need to decide what your economy needs. And I unfortunately cannot tell you that without looking at your save file. You need to decide for yourself based off of the context on the ground where your oil is going to go. If you're looking to do like world conquest stuff, then it's going into military aviation and mobile armor, because this is tanks. Like that's what you got. You got tanks and you got military aviation. Like, of course that's where your oil is going to go. You could waste it on flamethrower companies, but chemical warfare is just like so much better, that if you're gonna use oil in like specialists, that's where you would use it. If you're not, then machine guns are also very, very good. And so don't be afraid to skimp on oil from that perspective. If you're using it militarily, there are a lot of applications for it. They're going to make your troops outrageously strong. Chemical warfare is probably the least expensive overall in terms of application for oil, just because you're not going to have to spend it in the industry. Like War Machine Industries literally requires oil in order to build anything, and then aerial reconnaissance on top of it, whereas this is just the cost. Mobile armor continues the trend of just expending tons of oil, but it's tons of oil for tons of stats, right? Mechanized infantry is no joke. That's 150 stats instead of 100 and 120. That's kind of a big deal. Aerial reconnaissance plus 50% provinces captured. Like you'll just like sweep through entire chunks of territory. So if you're trying to conquer stuff, then you use it here. If you're not, and you're trying to just like have a good economy that operates really well, then you've got compression ignition in order to increase the production of base resources, and then you've got oil turbine to just increase your electricity to god levels. That's really kind of where you need to apply it. The level 3 and 4s here are good for creating demand and for sustaining demand while you're getting to your level 5s, but unfortunately, unless you have an outrageous amount of oil, I don't think you're going to be able to use it everywhere. And I think that where it currently stands, the level 5 applications of it are a lot better than the level 3s and level 4s. And so just once you unlock these things, start turning off oil in your other applications. Like maybe you go back from vacuum canning down to canneries. It'll cost you some groceries, but that's kind of your pop's problem, right? Like you should not be obsessed about the price of one good when it comes to trying to balance the price of the only good that matters, which is oil. All right, that's Walker. That's how to use oil. I hope this was helpful for people. As I said, I'm gonna mostly just do campaign stuff for the remainder of the day. Not because I'm disinterested. I want to do some fun things. And I'm also looking for you guys to give me some ideas about more academy stuff, because I've got some more ideas that I'm kicking around. But other than practical applications of campaign, like in a campaign, I'm not 100% sure what would be most helpful for you guys. So just leave a comment, let me know. All right, that's Walker. Take care.